Hello everyone, and welcome to this slightly delayed She-Hulk Episode 1 review. Hope you're all doing well this morning. I had a couple of technical issues, had to restart my router, all that fun stuff. Hopefully I'm coming through loud and clear now. Into this show. It was a show, I'll give it that much. The rumors and speculation based on the trailers and footage we've been provided previously for this show, at least for this first episode, rang true. Kind of a mess. We'll go through it bit by bit, but before that, who is joining me on this beautiful Thursday morning? Yeah, it's Thursday. Holy cats! I got another show this evening too, if you can believe it. Deco, the Magister, Tall Person, Texas Attorney General, Secret Agent, Lurking Gopher, John Migda, John Miller, Shady Grin, Bridget. Who else is here? Jaeger Pony, and Mike Savage, Blarg, Non-Vitae Rex, Nighthawk. Good morning. Good morning. Hopefully I'll save you some money if you don't already have a Disney Plus subscription, or at least some time if you do. Because, at least for this first episode, man oh man, it was something. I'll just dive right into it and proceed. So we start off with a cold open on our protagonist, Jennifer Walters, as she is practicing a closing argument for a case she's about to go and close at her law firm. And it's a closing argument dealing with power. Something about the powerful. Do they merely have an obligation to refrain from the misuse of that power? And so you got a whole, with great power comes great responsibility kind of thing going on here. But of course we're, I guess, ostensibly referring to She-Hulk, Hulk power, that kind of power. Anyway, she's practicing in front of her paralegal and another lawyer. Paralegal who I believe is her best friend, Nikki, and another lawyer who I don't know his name off the top of my head, but just remember, he's a man. He's a man, so he has a very specific attitude he's going to have in this show for the all of minute and a half of screen time that this character has in this episode, of being condescending and a jerk. That's kind of it. And one of the first things he says is, "This is going to land better coming from me." Like she does this whole speech and she lays it all out, and it's, I guess, convincing. Like, you have no context for what the case they're working on is about, nothing. But he immediately says, "Now this is going to work better coming from me." And shock face. How dare you say such a thing? And he says, "There's plenty of time to switch things up and let me do the closing." Because I guess she's got these prominent law degrees over here, and she's a partner at this law firm. I'm sure there's some Easter eggs on this shelf somewhere. Anyway, yeah, so lawyer guy is better than her, and Nikki friend is all shocked, and she's not literally clutching her pearls, but she certainly could if she wanted to. Anyway, so they have a little banter, and the paralegal lady's like, "Oh, it was so good. It was, seriously, did you like it? Was it good? This is my career, how you use the weight of civic duty during your closing argument." Oh yeah, so they're having a little love fest with one another, and it's amazing. It's so great. My little genius is going to be a district attorney one day. Okay. I mean, if that's their goal in life, I suppose. Although this sounds like a civil suit, but I don't know what kind of case it was. But anyway, then Nikki indicates, "Hey, are you gonna, like, Hulk out and blow everybody's minds?" And I'm like, why would you do that in the middle of a trial for no reason? And she says, "Well, the only hulking out I'm gonna do is in the legal sense." Yeah. And so then we go to a, "You're probably wondering how this happened to me" situation. Oh, what great pause game I have. This. Yeah, so she breaks the fourth wall, as She-Hulk is wont to do. I actually own She-Hulk #1, at least She-Hulk #1 from the John Byrne run back in the 80s. I have the first couple issues of She-Hulk, actually, in my collection. And they were great. The art was amazing. I mean, it really is something to look at the quality of comic book art in that series, at least specifically for this example, as far back as the 80s, and just see how clean and accurate and sort of semi-realistic it was. And then you look at some of the comic book art that is being hailed these days from DC and Marvel, and just look like, Steven Universe type art for comic book characters and things. It's no comparison. Anyway, real quick, thank you so much, the Chaos 1X. Scribe, remember, this is the best Marvel show yet, except for the next one, or whichever one has the most different skin. The page shill said so. It was something else. There was an article that came out yesterday where, I forget who it was, but they said something to the effect of, this show has been review bombed with 1-star reviews mostly by male 30-year-olds. And I kept wondering how they determined that they were male 30-year-olds. And this was all review bombed on IMDb. I went over to IMDb, and I looked at the reviews. And yeah, there were 1-star ones there. It's true. Do you know how many 10-star reviews there were from people who said something to the effect of, let's just wait until the show comes out, guys. It's going to be great. There were so many 10-star reviews for a show that wasn't even out yet. And then you look at the actual accounts, and they were all created in this month. Okay, I can't say all. That would be hyperbole. Many of the 10-star reviews I saw, and I clicked on the names, which are all things like Sebastian 1567592 kind of things. All those accounts started in August of 2022. It's amazing. It's amazing. You know, if you review a show at 1 star without having seen it, and just on the basis of the trailers and things, not legitimate. It's no more legitimate to try to fight back against the haters by bombing it with 10-star reviews. I don't know if they understand that, but either way, they try to balance out their numbers or something. Anyway, it's like, yes, it's true, I'm a Hulk. Let me tell you how this happened to me. And so a few months ago, so it's been a few months up to this point of this trial that she's at, or this closing argument that she's at. She went out on a road trip with my cousin Bruce. Okay, so they're on a road trip. Now, many of you may have seen this, basically this entire sequence so far, in clips that they posted to Twitter and elsewise in the last week or two. Nothing is really that much different, except for the fact that we have an explanation as to why Bruce doesn't immediately turn into the Hulk in this situation. But we'll get to that in a second. Chaos One, thank you again. Sebastian 15672 is legit, just like Sebastian 15673. Yeah, it's a totally legit account. It's not a bot generated. It's not randomly generated. It's true. It's true. These days, you just want to use your first name and a whole bunch of numbers at the end. I mean, I suppose, whatever. Anyway, so I have to confess, I have not watched the most recent Marvel films. I know, it's crazy. Multiverse of Madness, Shang-Chi. I have not seen these films. I don't have a lot of prep. All I remember is basically the last Marvel movie that I really paid attention to, which was Endgame. And in Endgame, the Hulk, Bruce Banner, who had merged his personalities, risked his very existence to use the Infinity Gauntlet to restore half of all sentient life in the galaxy. The universe. The whole universe. And his arm was still messed up as a result of that. At the end of Endgame, his arm was in a sling, even as the Hulk, because the damage done to it was so great. It was one of those things they explained to us, like no mere mortal could withstand the power of using the Infinity Gauntlet. That's why Tony Stark died. That's why Thanos burned his arm up when he used it to make such a great effort in changing reality and everything. So his arm is still in a cast at this point, I guess. But now he's in Bruce Banner form. And we have it explained to us that he has a device on his arm that he has invented that is regulating his Hulkdom. Okay, so the whole thing in Endgame was Bruce Banner had found a way to integrate the Hulk personality, which is a separate personality, and the Banner personality together to create Professor Hulk, as it was known in the comic books. So you have the strength of the Hulk and the personality and intelligence of Bruce Banner. Classically, these two things are separate entities. One is not aware of the other really, or at least passingly so when they are, transformed one to the other. But he integrated them. But now Bruce Banner is controlling that with this device on his arm. Magical comic book device. Just so you're aware, that's why he's not going to immediately turn into the Hulk in the upcoming stressful situation. And it also becomes a very stupid device, plot device, shortly, but I'll get to that. Thank you, Nighthawk. Hey, Scribe, hope you're doing well, other than having watched this episode. I hope everything else is going well for you. So far, so good. Yeah. This episode was a bit of a strain, but we'll get through it together. Thank you, Nighthawk, very much. All right, so he's got this device on his arm that's keeping him from turning into the Hulk, even though I thought that he now had control of the Hulk and he liked being the Hulk, but I guess now he's regulating it. Maybe it's just convenience sake to fit into a car. I don't know. Anyway, so then we get into the sequence. By the way, we learn that Jennifer Walters has come up with the idea of eating Cheetos with chopsticks to keep the orange stuff off your fingers. That becomes like a slight running gag later, I guess. And Bruce is like, my God, that's really smart. You're not the only genius in the family. Okay. So anyway, so now we get to the sequence that you may have seen on Twitter or YouTube. I don't know where they all posted it. And basically, it's Jennifer Walters giving her theory to Bruce Banner about how Captain America died a virgin. Now, I don't know if Captain America is officially dead in the Marvel Universe. I mean, Steve Rogers, pardon me. Or was he... Like, when we saw old Steve at the end of Endgame, was he just presumed dead to that point, or... I don't know. Anyway, but her big theory is that Steve Rogers never got laid during the course of his entire life, that he died a virgin. Even though anybody who's watched Captain America, the movie, knows that he got some nookie early on by a blonde lady, pretty blonde lady. But, never mind that he, fought in World War II and saved the America, at least, from the Red Skull. Never mind that he saved the world on any number of occasions and made the ultimate sacrifice of leaving the time stream to restore everything and was on the run and all that. No. She's going to virgin shame Steve Rogers, I guess. There's a lot of that in this show. There's a lot of that in this. Taking these established, heroes and winnowing them down to nothing. That's kind of one of the other themes here. Anyway, so she goes through her theory that Steve Rogers is a virgin. There's really nothing else more to it than that. And we go on for a couple minutes. And then, all of a sudden, as she's telling her story about Steve Rogers being a virgin, a spaceship appears on the road. This is a spaceship from Sakaar. If you guys saw Thor Ragnarok, where the Hulk was a gladiator, this is a ship from that planet. What is the significance of this ship being here? We don't know yet, and that'll probably be later on in the episodes, I assume. But anyway, she's telling her story, not paying attention to the road, and a giant spaceship right in front of them. And then Bruce has to say, look out, and then she swerves, and they crash. Big crash, car crash. Thank you, John Miller. I see that that Rick and Morty writer is paying off. Yeah, I've all I've known about the writers and the people who created the show has been primarily in the last week or so with the interviews and the very things that they have said about themselves and their process. And one of the things that came out just, I think, yesterday or the day before was either the director or the main showrunner talking about how they didn't know how to write rousing legal dialogue for a trial show. They were thinking this was going to be this trial show, but then they realized that they don't have the chops to write rousing legal trials or court scenes. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if your main character is a lawyer, and the show is called She-Hulk Attorney at Law, and you're sitting in the writer's room and you realize that the collective genius of the writer's room has no ability to write interesting legal scenes, maybe this isn't the material for you. Just a thought. It's just a thought. But apparently they went ahead anyway. Thank you, Spud Gun. Hi, Scribbles. Got some extra money sharing the love with my fave creators. Thank you so much, Gun. Or Spud. Spud Gun? Do you like Gun? Do you like Spud? Either way, that is very, very generous. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm always humbled, whether it's a dollar or more. My father, fortunately, taught me the value of a dollar and what that represents as far as people's labor and time, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And I'm doing well. Hope you're doing well too. I'm your favorite one of your favorite creators. I'm flattered, honestly so. Anyway, so they get in a car crash. Now, in the original comic books, what happened was Jen Walters, lawyer, and I forget the exact circumstances, but she was shot by a mobster. I'm assuming some kind of vengeful thing because of her lawyering. And through comic book medicine, I think it would have made more sense if she needed a bone marrow transplant or something. But anyway, she needed a blood transfusion, and her cousin Bruce was available, and he gave his blood to save her life. Now, at that time, Bruce Banner and the Hulk were the two separate entities thing. So when she gets her blood transfusion and her particular transformation takes place, there's a very distinct contrast, and it makes it very interesting. But in this case, we don't have a situation where Bruce is having to save her life. In fact, the car crashes. She crashes the car, swerves off the road. She cuts her arm in the course of getting out of the car, and then she forcibly rips the car door, which is all bent in on itself, open. I mean, you can hear it like creak open and crack open. So I was just like, okay, so she ripped open a distorted car door. And this is before she gets any powers. Like, okay, I mean, adrenaline can do some things, leverage, all right, okay. So she saves Bruce, who is, the Hulk. And then, as she's pulling Bruce out of the car, somehow his blood drips into her wound. Now, as I'm watching this, and I know I'm being very nitpicky here, but I can't help myself, where is the blood coming from? Where is Bruce's blood coming from in this maneuver? I can't really play the video for you, unfortunately, but as I watched it, it just seemed kind of, logistically odd. And also, if his device is broken, why didn't he turn into the Hulk already? Anyway, I don't know what part of him is floating above here to drip the blood. There's a little drop of blood. Because his arm is here, aimed upwards, his other hand is over here, and his face is here. So where is this magical blood coming from? Again, maybe I missed it, but I don't know. Anyway, I thought about it, and it didn't make any sense, but I guess I'm not supposed to think too hard. Anyway, so then the blood starts dripping into her wound, and all of a sudden, she transforms into Hulk Lady, and then he starts transforming into the Hulk, and then we black out. And then she wakes, and she runs off into the woods. And then suddenly we cut to black, and she wakes up on the ground at night in the woods. So several hours have passed. And she looks up, and there's the moon through the sky, and she's all groggy, and she starts walking through the woods. And as she walks to the edge of the woods, she comes across a bar. Okay, so here's the story so far. She has gotten into a car accident. I assume she at least knows that much. She has both green blood and red blood on her person. Where did the green blood come from? When did she bleed green blood? Don't know. But she's got a bloody shirt on, and she walks up to this bar. Now, if you've been in a car accident and you need to find help, what would you do? Well, I know that I would go up to, the bouncer at the bar, or go into the bar and say, I've been in a car accident, I need some help, call 911. And also, where's my cousin? What happened to Bruce? All these thoughts would be going through my head. Well, for some reason, Sorry, no, I'm going to take the red letter media route. For no reason, she sneaks into the back of the building. Why? She's not a fugitive, right? She's not like running from the law. She was in a car accident. But for no reason, she avoids going in the front. I have a theory as to why she avoided going through the front. It was to completely justify this upcoming scene. A scene that I read in an article, according to the writers of this show, that they were pressured to cut out of the show because it did nothing for the story and did not move the plot along and had nothing to do with anything. And they fought for this scene. I don't know why. I forget exactly the explanation, but whatever the explanation was, it doesn't justify why we have this scene. Anyway, so she sneaks into this bar and goes into the ladies' room, and she starts to clean herself up when all of a sudden, the most stereotypical good time girls burst in as a group. And they're like, "Girl, what happened to you? Girl." No judgments. Whoever did this to you does not care about you. Right? Obviously. You need shoes. This is a public bathroom. I'm just taking you through this excellent writing here. So, and at one point, I can't fall on that line. They say something to the effect of, whoever did this to you, he or she or they need to get some payback. Something like that. But it was he or she or they. Just so you know. So they start giving her hairspray, giving her a shawl coat thing, giving her shoes. I have to call my cousin to get me. Can I borrow somebody's phone? And then they all like shove their smartphones in her face. All at once. I'm like, okay. And what did this have to do with anything? Why didn't she just go up to the front door and ask for help? I've been in a car accident. I need to call. I need a phone. I don't know. I have a theory. Besides facilitating this scene, I have a theory it's because the guy at the front door was a guy. I have to assume that because as soon as she's out here in front of the place, after having been put on the jacket and everything else, I guess she walked out of the bar the same way she came in and made no scene, because all of a sudden men come out of the bar and the guy says, "All right, we're out. Ladies' night was a bust." And then this group of men, like, what's up? They see a woman, obviously, and like vultures, they're like, well, we couldn't find any women in there. So even though there were like 4 women that I guess all rejected these guys, because they were real winners too. He's like, "What's your name?" "I think my boyfriend's coming." "Oh, come on, where are you going?" "Yeah, where are you going? So what, you too good to talk to us?" You know, because this is what happens, I guess. And then she turns around and she hulks out at him, "Rawr!" And then they freak out, they go, "Ah!" And then all of a sudden she's tackled by the real Hulk, and then we again cut to black. Because, you know, she suddenly becomes unconscious by being not attacked, but tackled by the Hulk. And next thing we know, she wakes up on an island paradise, still wearing her bloody shirt and everything, and a Led Zeppelin shirt was left for her, and she walks out in her Led Zeppelin shirt into this island paradise. And she then walks down into secret basement of Island Paradise, and she finds Professor Hulk, or they've changed that to Smart Hulk in this. Did I was under the impression that his name in the MCU now is Professor Hulk in this form. But they keep referring to him as Smart Hulk. Was that... I don't remember the scene from Endgame at the little diner with Ant-Man and everything, where Ant-Man's being caught up on the last 5 years kind of deal. Was it Smart Hulk or was it Professor Hulk? Anyway, so the rest of this, it really comes down to the dialogue. It really comes down to the dialogue and the characterizations here. Because the entire process from this point in the show forward, I can summarize it as best as I can because it's going to be a lot. Rather than reading everything that comes up, let me summarize this. Bruce Banner, the classic Bruce Banner Hulk scenario, was a curse. Bruce Banner could not control the Hulk, and the Hulk was a separate entity. You think back to the classic sort of Bill Bixby iteration of the guy trying to stay from society, trying to protect people from this uncontrollable rage monster he had inside of himself that, you know, once he lost consciousness and the ability to control himself, this instinctual ball of destruction would just be let loose and hurt people and destroy things, and he had no control over it. It was a curse. It was a perpetual Jekyll and Hyde situation where Hyde could pop out at any time, right? That was the core of the character, struggling between controlling his anger, trying to do good in the world, but also having this big green monkey on his back the whole time. Okay. That is a pretty bad situation by itself. Now, add on to that his self-sacrifice towards rescuing half of all life in the universe, and everything that we've seen the Hulk go through and do, and Bruce Banner go through and do in the MCU alone. It hasn't been the best execution of the character. Reason being, Universal Studios still owns distribution rights to doing Hulk movies, rather than just Hulk appearing as a sub-character. And the Hulk, I think, has been done wrong since about, the Avengers movie forward. Avengers movie was fine. After that, not so much. Anyway, this guy is a genuine hero. Self-sacrifice, saved people, had his problems, been cursed, want to talk about trauma, etc. Okay. All of that is irrelevant because Jen Walters has been catcalled. I just want you to remember that. Jen Walters is a woman. She has been catcalled, and she's been mansplained to. And that is far more traumatic and terrible than anything that poor Brucey over here has had to go through. Okay? So Bruce has had this entirely different experience with being a Hulk. Very traumatic experience. Well, Jen is having none of that. Anyway, so he spends the rest of the show basically trying to explain to her that, look, you're a Hulk now, this is going to be a problem, you're going to have a lot of issues, you know, when you get angry, you're going to turn into this monster, you're going to lose control of yourself, we have to take precautions. He's speaking from experience. He's not lying to her, he's not talking down to her. As far as he knows, and everything that we've seen in the show so far, she gets angry, tears up a bunch of stuff, and then blacks out. So, from his perspective, he knows what he's talking about. But he doesn't know what he's talking about. Oh, and by the way, somehow, here's the thing, let me see if I can find that spot. He said he spent years integrating the Hulk Banner identities. Tony bought him this beach house lab to work in sometime after, I think, the Avengers situation. And he gets a little remorseful about missing Tony. Like he says, so he always said one day he'd swing by and take it back. And he gets a little remorseful about it for a second. You see a little sadness there. And Jen's just like, okay, whatever. And she's like, well, what was that alien ship? Oh, okay, yeah, it was from Pecoraro. It was probably trying to deliver a message. I guess we'll figure that out later. You know, weird stuff kind of finds you when you're a Hulk. Okay. Well, anyway, and she's like, I'm a Hulk now? Like, my blood got into your system, and you got a lethal dose of gamma radiation. Lethal? I'm gonna die? And he says, no. There's this weird genetic quirk in our family line that allows us to synthesize gamma radiation. I'm not going to harp too much on that. Comic book logic, whatever, it's fine. But then let's see if I can... So he talks about how in analyzing her blood, he found that there was something interesting about it, and he used it on himself. And he says, I was able to use it to completely heal my arm. Because I'm better than you? She says. He says, no, it's just different. And he says, my arm is healed. And she says, yeah, because I'm better than you. And she starts calling him smug because he referred to himself as Smart Hulk. It's pretty smug to call yourself smart. Oh yeah, you know, the guy who just saved you, analyzed your blood, synthesized this, that, and the other, yada, yada, yada. It's pretty smug to call yourself smart. He's like, well, that's what people call me. And she says, you used it. It's an implied endorsement. Like, what? Okay, well, anyway, yeah, Jen Walters is already obnoxious. The guy just, you know, saved her life, is trying to help her, and she's just being an absolute jerkwad. But he's the bad guy, and he just defers to it. So he analyzed her blood samples, and then he destroys her blood samples, because if you saw the Incredible Hulk movie, we know the dangers of allowing Hulk blood samples to get out into the ether, as it were. So he's cut off that plot thread, which I appreciate because we don't need to repeat that, and, amazingly enough, the Hulk learns from his mistakes. He says, even if there's only a 1,000,000% chance that it makes another one of us. And so I'm wondering if that is alluding to the events of the Incredible Hulk movie. Will we ever see Samuel Stearns, the leader? Probably not played by the same actor, but, you know, it was teased in that movie, but anyway. He's like, Jen, this is not going away. And she says, give me that little device thing that you had that kept you as Bruce. Which is a good point. Like, okay, why not? And he says, it was calibrated to me. And she says, great, make me one. For me, calibrate it to me. And he says, Jen, I've been struggling with this for years. The best I could do was merge my two halves. Why he can't make a similar device is just glossed over. Literally, they never bring it up again. He just says, I can't. You can't. Why? Why can't you? You just discovered that you and your cousin share a similar genetic makeup that allows you to synthesize gamma radiation, etc. Why can't you? They never explain it. They never explain it. They introduce this magical device just to ensure that Bruce doesn't turn into the Hulk before he can give his blood over in the car crash, and now it's irrelevant. Maybe it'll come up later in the series, I don't know, but it's just gone. And she's like, I don't want to be a Hulk. And he's like, you don't have a choice, that's the way it is, you're going to have to learn to live with this, and I will teach you, I will help you. Because Bruce is still under the impression, the honest, genuine impression, that she is going to have this split personality rage monster living inside of her. And so he starts taking her through all this regimen stuff. Oh, but first she needs breakfast. She needs pancakes. This is how she deals with stress. She needs pancakes. So she's got stress pancakes. And how am I supposed to work? How am I supposed to be a lawyer? How long is this going to take? And he's like, well, it took me 15 years to come to this point of merging my two personalities. 15 years? And he takes out this giant book of things where he tracked his progress like a scientist. As we've seen in The Incredible Hulk and so on. He was tracking his transformation, is tracking his situation. And now he's like, well, I guess now it'll be turned into a guidebook. And she's like, I don't have 15 years, I have a career. And now we have the scene that was put into all the trailers and everything, where he starts explaining to her, okay, so your transformations take place by distressed emotional states. You know, so we need to know the exact threshold that causes it for you. You know, anger and fear. And she's like, oh, those are like the baseline of any woman just existing. Anger and fear. Yes, women are just angry and fearful all the time. Okay, that's great. Anyway, so he confronts her with a wall full of circular saw blades, which, you know, makes sense. And then she turns into a Hulk and stops it and then lifts off the door. And then we get the CGI. Now, I will say, while not perfect, obviously, the end result CGI for the show, and She-Hulk was not terrible. It wasn't as rubbery looking as it was in the early previews, but it was still CGI. It was still obviously CGI, and some of the facial movements in places were a little claymation-ish. But, you know, the Hulk looked all right, and for the most part, she looked okay. They've obviously done some refining since the first preview. So, anyway, this is what we get. So, it looks okay. Anyway, and so Bruce is suddenly surprised as she comes out of this chamber that she's talking as herself. He's like, you don't have a second person in there? You're you? I'm not talking to a rage monster who has no vocabulary. What? He's confused. Now, in the comic books, this made a little bit more sense because, you know, Bruce Banner was turned into the Hulk through a nuclear explosion, whereas Jennifer Walters got an infusion of his blood, so it was diluted. The whole effect was diluted to a great degree. That's also why the She-Hulk is, in the comic books, not as strong as the Hulk. Just as a matter of course. It's not a comment on the character, but then of course the writers of today can't distinguish between a difference in physical strength and a difference in strength of character. So anyway, yeah, so he explains to her that this is bizarre, this doesn't make any sense, and she's just, well, it's just me. I'm just me. And Bruce can't figure this out. And he says, well, you still can't control when you transform. You know, he's still looking for some way to be useful, because now everything that he knows is out the window. And she just, like, picks up his notebook and tears off everything but, like, the last page or something. So, anyway, he's saying, I don't think you've thought through how dangerous this level of power is. She just wants to leave. She just wants to get up and go. She's like, okay, you know, I'm fine, I'm me, I'm just going to get up and go. And he's like, well, wait, no. You can't be emotional, you know, you'll lose your control. You don't forget Hulk rage. And I'm telling you, when people start seeing you as a monster, that never goes away. Now remember, this is coming from a guy who spent years on the run and fearful of his own emotions for the safety of others. Remember, he's talking from a place of legitimate trauma. Okay, so she goes along with it. And they do some meditative stuff, right? So he's doing his meditative stuff, which we saw him doing at the end of the Incredible Hulk movie as Edward Norton, where he was trying to take control of his anger, right? And find a way to balance it out. And so they go through this whole thing, and she's like complaining about how meditating is just about like namaste, breathe in, breathe out, etc. Close your eyes and breathe, blah, 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 whatever. And then we get she's sleeping, he brings up an air horn, scares her, and she turns into the She-Hulk. It's comedy. Because he says, for comedy, absolutely, that was necessary. And by the way, except for, I think at one point, and I forget what it was now, maybe I'm just stone-faced, I didn't laugh once this entire episode. I chuckled a little bit, I think, earlier, for some reason. I don't remember what it was. But that was it. I kept waiting for the comedy. But anyway, so they go through this training montage, and he starts talking, okay, you're going to need 2 wardrobes, one for Jen and one for your Hulk body. Okay, practical. Right? And I'm not sure, but the proportion of these arms, it just seems to me that they shifted over the course of the episode. Might just be me. I don't know. It seemed out of place for some reason. Oh yeah, spandex is your best friend. Comedy. And then we get the rock throwing scene. So he throws a boulder, and then she throws a boulder farther than he threw the boulder freehand. And then he, who can't stand a girl showing him up, picks up a big boulder and throws it off into the stratosphere until it becomes a comet. And I'm thinking to myself, on what city is that thing going to land? By the way, they're in Mexico. They're on a Mexican island, I guess, somewhere. So he throws it off because he wants to show her up. because his ego is so fragile that he has to show her up by throwing a rock off into the stratosphere. And she's like, very good. Just trying to show you how it's done. Throwing a rock, destination unknown. And then they go through jumping, and it's difficult for me to tell if this is better or worse than what we originally saw in the trailer. Anyway, they go jumping, and then we do the balancing thing, and he's balancing his body, and she just starts doing pretzel moves effortlessly without any practice, and she's just done. And then they go through, like, slamming their fists into the earth, and he does it, and then she does it better, and then he gets jealous, and he pushes her off the cliff, because the Hulk is just one big green with envy, jealousy monster now. Thank you, John Miller. Hulk ballistic missile program. Yes. Yes, apparently so. Apparently so. Spud gun. It'll burn up in the atmosphere, Scott. Oh, I guess so. I guess that was the thing. Yeah, he threw it so hard into the atmosphere at an arc that it'll burn up in the atmosphere and it'll be totally gone before it hits anybody. I'm sure that's fine. Yeah, so Bruce Banner, who has spent 15 years managing his emotions, meditating himself into a place where he can integrate two personalities, and before that, managing his anger to the point where he could control it, now he's being shown up by a girl and he can't take it. And so he gets jealous. And he makes all these, like, tantrum moves. And she's like, when am I ever going to use this as a lawyer? Well, I'll tell you what. You'll find out by the end of this episode, I guess, because of the writing. So she's like very dismissive of him, and he's like, "Well, you know, there's some downsides to being a Hulk, but there are a few upsides. Our bodies metabolize alcohol at an incredibly fast rate. Wow, which means that we can drink so much and not get drunk." And I'm like, then what's the point? What's the point of that? Why would you? He says something to the effect of, like, all of the buzz and none of the hangover, something like that. And like, well, if you're buzzed, then you're getting drunk. What? Anyway, so then we cut from afternoon, I guess, to nighttime when there's just dozens of bottles on the floor, and they've been sitting there drinking the whole time. And she's like, you built this bar by hand? Yep. Yeah, me and Tony. Yep, him and Tony. And I don't know if I'll land on it here, but in the bar are carved the initials BB and TS. Bruce Banner and Tony Stark. And again, the Hulk gets a little wistful about missing Tony. And we just gloss over that. That doesn't matter. More drinking. And then the next morning, apparently she's got a hangover. She says, Bruce, you failed to mention... Let's see if I can fall on it. I have to deal with a Hulk-sized hangover. If your bodies can metabolize alcohol to the point where you don't have any drunkenness, why do you have a hangover? I don't know. Anyway, so then they do some more meditating and stuff, and she's impatient. So it's like, when can I leave here? And he's like, you have a lot to learn before you become a superhero. And she's like, Bruce, I'm not going to be a superhero. And he's like, what else are you going to do as a Hulk? I'm going to use my law degree that I'm still paying off a fortune in student loans for. And then he's like, you know, but you can't pretend we're not, like, two people on Earth who have the ability to help people. Like, you know, like, be a superhero. Like, help people. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. She's like, no. Here's the thing, Bruce. I'm great at controlling my anger. She says in a angry voice. Let's remember this now. I do it all the time. Uh-huh. Let's see. Can I fall on that line? Please tell me I can follow that line. When I'm catcalled in the street, when incompetent men explain my own area of expertise to me. I do it pretty much every day, because if I don't... I will get called emotional or difficult or might just literally get murdered. Murdered? Now there is a Robert Downey Jr. callback for you. Can you name that movie? Murdered? Yeah, so Jen Walters has it so hard, guys, as compared to Bruce Banner. Catcalled. Mansplained to. Being called names, guys. She obviously has a really good handle on her emotions when she's describing these things that happen to her, and she's sitting there gritting her teeth and looking so intently. I have a great handle on my emotions. So I'm an expert at controlling my anger because I do it infinitely more than you. She says this to the integrated personalities of the Hulk and Bruce Banner. A guy who spent 15 years and had a giant notebook of everything he had to do to come to terms with this thing that happened to him. Oh, but guys, she's been catcalled and didn't lose it. So, just so you know. And then all of a sudden, she turns into She-Hulk. And then she turns back. Because she can just control it automatically. Which, admittedly, is accurate to the comic books. But the context under which we are having this explained to us is so out of proportion. She's sitting there getting all angry thinking about being catcalled, but nothing happens until it does. So anyway, and so she's just like, I'm out of here. And he's like, why are you running away? I'm gonna borrow the Jeep, drive to LA, and you can pick it up at my place. And I did your therapy stuff, I can change back and forth. And he's like, whether you like it or not, you're a superhero. And I don't agree with that necessarily. Like, if you don't want to do that, you're not required to do that. You know? Now, he's not wrong that, as the Vision explained to us, I think in Civil War, or maybe it was Age of Ultron, either way, you know, super things tend to attract themselves to super beings. It's probably unavoidable that she will have some encounters with people or situations or things where she cannot help herself if she's a good person. But, you know, saying this has to happen, And he's like, who's going to protect the world if it isn't people like us? And again, he's not wrong, because this is the guy who saved half of the living beings in the universe. And he's been through a lot. And she's like, I'm sorry, the idea of being a superhero is not appealing to me. Okay. I don't need to join some secret government contractor squad and have my entire life taken away from me. You're standing in the presence of a man who saved the universe through self-sacrifice and risk and injury and loss. I mean, okay, you don't have any interest in it, but do you have to denigrate the guy and all of his friends and the friends that he lost? The people that died so that you were alive? No, never mind. Never mind. Comedy show, guys. Oh, so you didn't wind up alone, hiding away on some remote beach with no friends, no relationships, never seeing your family, and definitely not dealing with a decade's worth of trauma. Yeah, what happened to the Hulk's friends? Let's think for a sec. What happened to it? What happened to Tony? What happened to Natasha? What happened to Steve? Huh? What happened to his entire life for something that he had no control over for most of it? Oh, and then, of course, Thanos happened. You know, he had to spend 5 years with anybody else he knew all being dead. And then, you know, risking his life to bring everybody back. Yeah, look, you know, just condescend and insult this man who is trying to help you legitimately as both a friend and a family member. Okay. Why would you want that for me, Bruce? He doesn't want it for you. That's why he was trying to help you through what he knew at the time was going to be a destructive and traumatic change in your life. He was trying to make sure that you avoided his fate. Have you been paying no attention to everything and every sentiment that has been coming out of this man's mouth since the car accident? Obviously not. Just... Anyway, so she decides she's going to leave. And for reasons that, again, make absolutely no sense, he decides to stop her by standing in front of her Jeep. Now remember, this is the Hulk standing in front of a Jeep. The laws of physics in the MCU do not apply when it comes to the Hulk standing up against a force coming at him. But somehow, her stepping on the gas carries the Hulk off his feet and forward. And he is unable to stop this Jeep. Remember when he shoulder rammed a giant alien spaceship thing in the Avengers? Remember that big dramatic moment where he transforms into the Hulk in the attack on New York and he just shoulder rams into that big creature and stops it? And yeah. Well, no, apparently this Jeep is made of sterner stuff. And then we have this long, protracted, unnecessary, inexplicable fight between the two just for the sake of them fighting. And at every turn, she bests him. She applauses him through sonic blasts into submission. He throws her around. Then she destroys his bar. The bar that he built with Tony Stark. Very symbolic. Okay? And then he makes her rebuild his bar, the bar that he built with Tony Stark. And then when they're finally done, later that afternoon, I guess, they just constructed this whole thing in an afternoon, she has carved her initials into the bar. Because, you know, she's on par now with those two guys. You know, the guy that sacrificed his life to destroy Thanos, alongside the guy who risked his very existence to bring back every living thing in the universe that had been destroyed. Yeah, you know. Anyway, so they hug. She said, "And I'm sorry that I said a bunch of harsh but very true things." And he's like, and he rightfully points out, wow, an apology that still doubles down on a thing you're apologizing for. Yeah, it's almost like it's not actually an apology. Sorry, not sorry. Anyway, so then she drives back into real life in being a lawyer, and we're back to where we started. So she's getting ready to do her closing argument. So all that happened several months ago. How much time did she actually spend on the island? Only felt like a few days, a handful of days. But in that time, she has done nothing as the She-Hulk in between. Okay? The only people that know that she's the She-Hulk at this point in time, as we begin finally the actual story that we're in, is her, Bruce, and her friend Nikki, the paralegal. All right, those are the only three people who know that she is a Hulk. Okay? And she's like, and I never have to be a Hulk. So I'm going to go win this case now. Okay? And then we get our courtroom scene. And the courtroom scene appears to be a civil trial. My client was well within his right to protect his business interest. These accidental deaths were an unfortunate byproduct, etc., etc. So was it some kind of civil trial over workplace deaths or something? I think. Because the character that we see in the other chair, sorry, let me get it there. So this guy, he works for a law firm. We see him in the trailers as her eventual boss, because she's going to start working at a law firm that does superhuman law. So, again, I'm assuming this is a civil trial of some kind. And he's looking over at her for reasons I can't understand. But anyway, so the other lawyer is finishing up his closing statement about this thing. And then the judge says, Miss Walters, your closing argument? And can I fall on the line here? Because it's important. Because a male lawyer guy says something. Oh my gosh. Don't screw this up, Walters. Clicks tongue. So she gets up and she starts to say her thing, but all of a sudden, before she can even begin, there's an explosion and this woman busts through the wall. Why? I don't know. But, so there's a short hallway outside and suddenly she busts through the wall. Okay, so she's super strong. Okay. Just remember that. And then everybody's like, and everything starts falling down and there's all things start doing. And then best friend says, you need to do your thing. Now, super strong lady is in the background here fighting with cops, like regular human being cops, and she's having trouble with them somehow. Bailiff, stop resisting. She can apparently just sneeze her way through a wall. Her resisting would be you guys flying and being broken, but apparently not now for some reason. And Jennifer's like, you want me to do it right now in front of everybody? And so she has to be convinced to turn into the Hulk. And she's like, oh God, I really like this outfit. And the friend has to remind her to take off her shoes because, you know, her shoes will bust. And we have to protect the shoes. You know, people's lives are potentially under threat behind her with this person who just smashed through the wall and is somehow fighting regular human bailiffs, but nothing's happening. They're just kind of waiting for her to show up. Takes off her shoes, turns big green. Everybody's like, what? Heroic music playing. And bad guy says, and who are you supposed to be? Jennifer Walters, attorney at law. And then, in a cut so quick that I thought I'd missed something, lady, attack lady, supervillain lady, is standing in front of the bench with just these two bailiffs or whatever. Can I fall on it? Good God. Yeah, who the hell are you? Jennifer Walters. And then, all of a sudden, she's on the other side of the room and she's throwing a table at her. Something was seriously cut from the chain of events in this courtroom fight scene. But all of a sudden, she's in a different part of the courtroom and she's throwing a table or a desk or whatever at the jury from across the room. And Jennifer Walters, She-Hulk, stops it. This happens so fast, guys. I mean, seriously, seconds. Now, when I was originally watching this, I literally, I clicked away onto a different tab to check on something for a second, and the whole scene had changed so fast, I had to rewind because so many events had taken place in like 5 seconds that I didn't know where I was. So, supervillain lady does this really... I mean, it's... God, can I fall on the frame? Boy, these frames, I tell you. This is just... so bad. You gotta be kidding me. Just, I want to get to one shot of this thing. I can't do it, can I? Okay, well, I wish I could fall on it for you and show you. But she does this flying kick that is very awkward looking. In the sense that it looks like they had her pose with her leg out and her other leg like perfectly crooked up to her thigh, with her foot up to her thigh, and she was just like rolled into place, making the flying kick. It's very exact. And given the size of the room, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But anyway, so the She-Hulk punches her once and she's done. One punch She-Hulk. And the lady's done. And then we start a girl power song, you know, who's that girl or whatever. And then she tries to straighten herself out, and she's like, I'm ready to close, Your Honor. And then we cut to the girl power song closure with a whole bunch of concept art for a bunch of things that we either saw or are going to see or happened afterwards or something. All these men looking very uncomfortable around her and things. Yes, her explaining how Captain America is a virgin. And then just stuff. So anyway, and then we get an after credit. Apparently every episode's going to have an after credit scene. And we have an after credit scene where she continues on. I guess she went back to the island later. And then she continues on with her theory that Captain America died a virgin. Because, you know, that ass. America's ass. And Hulk explains to her that he's not a virgin. He lost his virginity to a girl in 1943 on the USO tour. And the episode ends with, yes, I knew it. Captain America cuts to black. That comedy. That's it, guys. That's it. We end on Captain America fucks. So, there you go. That was She-Hulk episode number 1. Tearing down the Hulk and his honest attempts to help her through something that he's been through and had no foreknowledge that she'd suddenly just take to it like a duck to water. Her diminishing everything about him and anybody else that was male, Tony Stark, him, Captain America, and then one punching a supervillain lady who was on screen for less than 30 seconds in a fight scene that was obviously chopped down from something bigger. They probably had to make time for that, you know, bathroom bar scene at the beginning of the episode. I don't know. But, yeah, and again, comedy is subjective. You know, some people might find it funny in some way, shape, or form. I didn't find it funny. And not in the I was offended sense of I didn't find it funny, in the absolute absence of humor kind of not finding it funny. Important details didn't make any sense. How did the blood get into her arm from this magical, invisible source hovering above her arm? I know. I'm stuck on that. It seems like such a simple thing. Like, why would that be so badly done? Just looking at that still frame made no sense. The blood came from the heavens or something. I don't know. Yeah, better at Hulk than everything except for when she isn't, and then when she isn't, it's because the Hulk is jealous and showing off and trying to prove that he's better than she is, because that's what Bruce Banner meditative Hulk does now. And by the way, catcalling, having things explained to you by men, and assuming that you're going to be murdered for being emotional, all so much worse than anything that Bruce Banner has gone through in the last 15 years. Just so you know. Yeah. So there you go. That's She-Hulk episode 1. I am told by several people who are obviously not shills or anything, I am told that once you get past the first episode, things get better. Oh, is that what first impressions are now? Never mind the lousy opening, it'll get better afterwards? Well, whether it does or not, I'll be there to watch it next week, and we'll find out together. A couple of comments from you guys before I move on. Renovatio, only feminists would find it funny and nobody else finds feminist humor funny. I guess. I don't know. I suppose. I guess I'd have to see a review from a feminist to know. Yeah. Shiro Amada, man-hating, angry, feminist She-Hulk. Truly raising the bar. Did I go back to the 70s exploitative films? You know, I'd almost appreciate that. If this was like, oh, I don't know, like Pam Grier in Coffee, and this was She-Hulk, that might be kind of fun. Tongue-in-cheek about it, but it's not. You just have this whiny, ungrateful, obnoxious individual who is just like, I'm better than you at this thing already, so like, why am I here? Like, stop trying to help me. I can do everything on my own. Yeah, this is why the character of Bruce Banner is classically rendered is an interesting character. He had an inherent conflict. He had to maintain himself. He had to maintain meek and weak to protect other people from a force he had no control over. Right? He struggled. He had hardships. And that's why it took years and years and years for him to come to a point where he could integrate those two personalities. It was a triumph of a kind. One that was won after years of struggle and strife. Some kind of character development. This character, she's one and done. Well, you know, that's it. Super strong lady punches through a wall into a courtroom for some reason, struggles with regular humans for some reason, punch her once and she's done. And now I'll go back to the case. Comedy show. Lawyer show. But anyway. Oh, and Cyan Wizard, yeah. I lost hope for the show when they revealed they now only knew nothing about writing a law show, but just decided not to do the research to make it happen properly. That was the other thing too. Yeah, I talked about that earlier. They were in the writer's room. They realized they just didn't have the chops to write rousing legal interactions or law or court cases or something. And I'm like, okay, well, gosh, you know, if only you were working for a company that had money. If only you were working for a company where you could hire a consultant at worst, you know? Or maybe hire somebody from a show that does or has done those things and bring them on to help out. But you know, I mean, you're working for Disney Plus, you know, a low-budget independent operation. So I guess you got to work with what you got. That's it. Or, yeah, like you say, heaven forfend, you do some research. Or you watch some legal shows like, I don't like Boston Legal. You want to see how Boston Legal does comedy and law at the same time? That's a good example. If you're going to crib something for this show, Ally McBeal? Really? Legally Blonde? I'd be going for something relatively smart, like Boston Legal, but oh, you know, most of the main characters there are men, so I can't do that. Anyway, everybody, thank you for joining me for this train wreck of episode 1, in my opinion. If you'd like to hear more from me, you can find me here tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for TED Excellence, where I'll once again take a look at not one, but two off-brand TED Talks for education and enjoyment. I call it masochism. Yes. But that'll be tonight. And otherwise, everybody, I hope you have a good rest of your Thursday. Hope you are all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon. And I will see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.